Please be silent as we reflect upon our company motto. Obedience breeds discipline. Discipline breeds unity. Unity breeds power. Power is life.
Within the dark corners of America's worst memories, there lies the Raccoon City Destruction Incident of 1998. A chaotic viral outbreak, unleashed by the corrupt and secretive Umbrella Corporation, culminated in the destruction of this industrial Midwestern town. Coupled with the full-featured documentary, The Lost City of America, this series aims to give you, the public, a more in-depth look at some of the more important events, people, and information surrounding this tragedy. Information that was previously kept hidden from the public until now.
You've got this massive multinational corporation dealing in illegal viral research and bioweapon development. Is it really any surprise that so many of its employees in the end were in it for themselves?
Throughout the details regarding the Raccoon City Destruction Incident, one may find themselves noticing a recurring theme: deception. From its founder, Oswald Spencer, all the way down to a low-level duo of researchers, stories of Umbrella employees turning on each other and the company can be found as far back as Umbrella's very inception. Previous episodes of this series, as well as our documentary, The Lost City of America, have covered the deceptive ways of Umbrella's founders. In this episode, we'll focus on telling the stories of those Umbrella employees who turned on the company or went rogue, at times both before and during the Raccoon City Destruction Incident. Included in this episode is a never-before-seen anonymous interview with an Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure serviceman, recorded back in 2003 when the Umbrella trials were still active. This tape couldn't be used as evidence in the hearings, but it did somehow find its way into the Umbrella trials archive. This interview helps to provide you with a broader picture regarding the deception that occurred within Umbrella's ranks. The first case of Umbrella employees turning on each other was with Oswald Spencer in the 1960s and 70s, who personally arranged for his colleagues, James Marcus and Edward Ashford, to be killed in separate incidents, all over Spencer's paranoia that his colleagues would try to steal away his twisted vision for humanity. Despite his paranoia seeming over the top, it wasn't totally unfounded. Since the beginning, each of the three founders sought to outdo the others in their research, in hopes of reaching a breakthrough with Progenitor. Edward Ashford would be the first victim in this power struggle, as Spencer would have Edward infected with Progenitor the same year of Umbrella's founding, in a staged lab accident which ultimately took his life. As it would turn out, James Marcus was also planning an attempt to overpower Spencer as the head of Umbrella. Marcus believed that his breakthrough in creating the T-virus would lead to Umbrella's board of directors favoring Marcus as the company head. Instead of getting Umbrella's attention, however, his executive training facility was shut down, its support rescinded, and eventually, Marcus would be assassinated by a USS team led by Albert Wesker and William Birkin. In 1991, Albert Wesker successfully managed to get a transfer from the viral research team at Arclay to Umbrella's intelligence department.
4 years ago, when Birkin's proposed G-virus plan was approved, I put a transfer request for the data information section, and my request was immediately approved.
Since this was the company's own clandestine group, Wesker was given credentials to show as if he was an ex-employee of Umbrella, allowing him to simultaneously work for other companies. He would join the U.S. Army that same year, becoming a virologist for them in an illegal bioweapons program that they were conducting. After his return from military service in 1996, he was quickly reassigned by Umbrella to head the newly formed STARS team in Raccoon City. At some time in early 1998, a secretive company rival to Umbrella, known only as the Organization, made contact with Wesker and convinced him to work with them quietly. Wesker gladly took the opportunity. The T-Virus project had stalled with Spencer's choice to allow Birkin to work on the G-Virus, and through whatever insider information Wesker was privy to as an Umbrella intelligence officer, he foresaw that Umbrella's days were numbered. Albert Wesker's actions in attempting to steal Umbrella company data during the STARS mansion raid had ultimately failed, but Wesker would continue to work with this organization after the event. Between 1998 and 2003, Wesker and the organization would undermine Umbrella even further, eventually becoming a secret hand in the downfall of the company. This allowed Wesker to finally steal Umbrella's data, the majority of which would later become the Umbrella Archives data that is featured in this series.
So, Birkin, he's working on his own thing underneath Raccoon. But across the city, you got Umbrella employees going rogue left and right. Let's see, Nathaniel Bard, the doctors at Raccoon General, Greg Mueller at the university, and Birkin, of course.
William Birkin has been mentioned in just about all of our previous works regarding Raccoon City. He is a central figure not only to the outbreak in the city, but also in Umbrella's history. His contributions to the company saw the further advancement of the T-Virus from Marcus's Alpha strain into the Beta strain using Ebola, and finally the Epsilon strain. But for Birkin, the T-Virus was still not enough. Birkin wanted to create something that would surpass the various negative aspects that still existed within T. After discovering the Golgotha or G-Virus in 1988, dormant within Lisa Trevor, Birkin became obsessed with its further research.
The prototype parasite, which we had delivered from a laboratory in France, was also administered to this host. She took in the parasite without showing any signs of adverse reaction. The lack of any reaction was an unsolved mystery, but everything has become clear to me now. The prototype parasite was incubating in the sample specimen's body for those 21 years. Then from that incubation period, the prototype parasite suddenly mutated. No, evolved. Yes, that may be a more appropriate word to describe it. This observation gave me more insight into my research. Through further modification and testing, I was able to derive a method to create the G that surpasses the performance of the T. This is a breakthrough that will change the very future of biological weapons and warfare. I can't wait to see the look on Alexia's annoying face when I finally announce my research. But unfortunately, I'll have to wait a few more years to completely verify my findings here.
This was difficult, however, given that he was the chief of research at the Arclay lab, which had its resources and manpower dedicated to T-Virus development. In fact, just after its discovery, G would be brought to an Umbrella facility in Loire, France. To Albert Wesker's surprise, in 1991, Oswald Spencer approved the creation of the Nest Laboratory, specifically to give Dr. Birkin the facilities and resources necessary for him to further develop the G-Virus.
A while ago, he had been transferred to a huge underground research facility in Raccoon City. That was the main facility for his G-virus research. But, to tell the truth, 4 years ago, I really didn't think that Spencer would approve G, because it deviated from the idea of weapon, and it was created with too many unknowns left unsolved.
That place was massive, the Nest, because the whole facility was expected to house even more dangerous crap than the Arclay facility had. Birkin was able to convince the company to assign him a reserve UBCS unit for security. That place had it all.
And so technically the UBCS operated as a mercenary group then?
Only on paper, yes. It's legal for corporations in America to have a private army, but it's gotta be in the form of a PMC. But even then, the legalities get muddy. But it's not like anyone outside the company could hire us and use us.
As mentioned earlier, along with Albert Wesker, the U.S. military was operating an illegal bioweapons program, which was actually a reactivated program they had prior to the Bioweapons Convention Treaty in the 1970s. This was the program that sought to buy BOWs from Umbrella, but they also wanted to develop their own bioweapons as well. Now, because the U.S. military and portions of the government were helping to cover up Umbrella's actions in illegal laboratories, they would eventually become aware of Birkin's independent work on the G-virus, as well as his frustrations with Umbrella's board of directors.
So this is the big one. What started the whole Raccoon City thing, yeah? Umbrella was attacking one of its own facilities. And all because yet another researcher got a god complex and decided to go rogue.
Much like his former boss, James Marcus, William Birkin saw himself as one who was more capable of leading Umbrella into the future, given all of his past and continued contributions. Seeing the G-virus as a path towards American wartime supremacy, the United States military would eventually make Birkin an offer. He could have his vision of G realized with their help and protection.
Thank you for your email, Dr. Birkin. Top brass has expressed an interest in this evolving bioweapon you've mentioned. Don't worry about the cost. Our company is the most well-funded in the whole of the United States. We'll contact you once we're ready to arrange a pickup for you and your family.
It's like spy versus spy. Umbrella knew Birkin was going to cave to the military offers, and Birkin knew Umbrella was going to try to stop him. Lots of unknowns at that time, but it was only a question of who was going to act first. Seemed like everybody wanted that virus.
It's unclear how long it took for Umbrella to find out about Birkin's plan, but given the company's ties to the US government, it isn't surprising they found out at all.
When did Nest become a nest for spies? 3 last month, and another 4 this month. And that's just the ones we caught. Step up security car, right? Or are you going to end up like your predecessor? Also, I'll be restricting access to the West area from today. Ignore all requests from headquarters for information on G. Those suits contribute nothing to this project as it is.
You are under suspicion of breaching your contract with the Umbrella Corporation. It has become clear that you have claimed ownership of the G project and have been in unauthorized contact with the U.S. military. Please respond to the Investigation Committee's summons within 24 hours.
Since the early research into G was done at the French facility headed by Dr. Christine Henry, Umbrella's USS would be given a mission to infiltrate the Nest facility, secure G samples, and detain Dr. Birkin alive so that he may answer to the company for his deceit.
The board has decided to cease all research on G, which was ongoing at the Nest laboratory. All funding for this project has been cut, and Laboratory Director William Birkin has been removed from his post. We are awaiting confirmation from Dr. Birkin on his compliance with this decision.
Orders for Special Agent Hunk are as follows. Penetrate the Umbrella Nest facility located beneath Raccoon City and recover G-virus samples from Dr. William Birkin. You are authorized to use any means necessary to secure this sample, but the board has stressed they would like Dr. Birkin to be apprehended. Regardless, it is imperative that the G sample is delivered to our facility in Loire Village.
So he and his wife Annette, they start running around the Nest to sabotage the place. The Birkins ran the place, so they were able to cut communications with the facility from the rest of the company, and then they went and turned the place into a living nightmare.
It's unclear if the Birkins had any kind of timeline to work with, but it was gathered that they sabotaged the nest facility several days prior to the raid. This included releasing experimental Hunter variants, cutting power to several sections, and ordering the facility security personnel to use lethal force on any intruders, including Umbrella employees or security. The raid would not succeed on the night of September 22nd. The USS team, headed by the mysterious operator Hunk, did in fact obtain samples of both the T and G virus, but they mortally wounded Birkin when he brandished a firearm during the altercation, opting to leave Birkin behind in the lab and making away with the viral samples.
Mister, I never fail a mission. I swear, the stories about that guy. He was something else, though, I'll give you that. But what a shit show that raid was. I get why they shot Birkin. Somebody pulls a gun, you're a fool if you give him a chance to use it. The whole dropping a case full of viral samples while being chased part, that's what gets me. He doesn't ever fail a mission, but when he does, he takes out a whole frickin' city to go along with.
In the mid-1990s, Umbrella USA's Chicago headquarters saw one of its top researchers transferred to the Arklay Laboratory in Arklay County.
He came from a research center in Chicago and was supposedly a very talented scientist, but he was a little too straight to be working at a place like this. He began to question the inhumanity of what was going on in the labs and made his opinions known to the upper-level executives.
This is made note of here because Umbrella's intelligence division saw Dr. Clemens as a potential risk.
I had heard rumors about him at the information section. Everyone seemed to agree that if any information ever leaked out, he probably would have been the culprit.
However, there is nothing within the records to show that Dr. Clemens ever spoke to the authorities, nor would he have had the chance. Dr. Clemens was put down by Raccoon City and STARS team survivor Jill Valentine during the Spencer Mansion raid, as he, like everyone else in the mansion and lab, had succumbed to T-virus infection. His final journal and other documents were recovered by Ms. Valentine, including his recorded voice memo.
There is just one more thing, and it is my last request. I hope you never have to lay eyes on me in this state. But if you do happen to run into me in my hideous form, I beg you to put me out of my misery. I hope you understand.
Dr. Clemens is mentioned because his story is the first mention of a name that will become synonymous with the Umbrella saga, Ada Wong. As mentioned previously, a company only ever referred to as the Organization employed clandestine operations to learn the inner workings of Umbrella. It's unknown just how many spies were injected into the Umbrella ranks at that time, but a young Ada Wong was one of those spies. Ada's job was to infiltrate the Arklay Research Lab, which she was successful in doing by going through the normal means of employment with Umbrella. Once there, she almost immediately sparked a relationship with John Clemens, seen as an easy way to gather inside information on the Arklay team's projects. It is unknown if Ada's efforts resulted in any information leaving the Arklay facility before its destruction. Ada Wong would later go down as one of the Raccoon City outbreak survivors, having escaped the city on October 1st with a G-virus tissue sample she acquired from the Nest facility. This sample would eventually fall into the hands of the organization and Albert Wesker. Dr. Nathaniel Bard was an Umbrella biologist who was employed within Raccoon General Hospital. His work within the hospital mostly revolved around drug research, and his own line of prescription medication was a well-known brand across the United States. He also partook in various viral research projects on behalf of Umbrella, which is what put him in the perfect position to create a cure for some of these viruses. Under the nose of Umbrella, Bard would have his team synthesize a T-virus vaccine, and at a blinding speed. As it was discovered, the team first began working on the vaccine around September 10th, when the T-virus was first discovered in a handful of sick patients.
This is VRC Chief Nathaniel Bard, September 29, 11 p.m. I am acutely aware that my time's running out. And I hope and pray, by making this recording and bringing the truth to light, that I can restore some small shred of honor to my name. All of Raccoon City's suffering began with the release of a biological weapon known as the T-virus. My employer, the Umbrella Corporation, engineered this virus. They don't want the world to know what they've done, so they're trying to erase all evidence that the virus ever existed.
Dr. Greg Mueller was a high-level researcher with Umbrella, whose employment began in 1990. By 1993, he is listed in the archive as being an outside hand in the T-virus project, meaning he was tasked with research and development of the project in areas outside the Arclay laboratory. Aside from holding positions at locations such as the Umbrella Corp Development Center and the former Arclay County Hospital, Mueller was a lab technician at the Raccoon City University, which, like many of the larger structures in the city, housed various areas dedicated to Umbrella research and testing. In August of 1998, Umbrella began to mass-produce its T-103 series of Tyrant mutants, which had several of these models sent and stored underneath the Raccoon City University. Mueller would be tasked with heading the Thanatos project, which was an experimental attempt to see if the T-103 could be further perfected in the form of the failed T-002 model that was encountered in the Spencer mansion. Mueller would become obsessed with this project, but objected to Umbrella's wishes in wanting the Thanatos mass-produced. Mueller saw mass production of the Tyrant models as part of the reason why they failed so frequently. To him, perfection would be achieved in a single model. He began to work on his single Thanatos model, while also working with University professor Peter Jenkins in creating the Daylight antivirus. This was to give Mueller insurance on being able to topple Umbrella, as the company did not want any kind of cure for the T-virus to be developed.
I assume that Dr. Mueller had met his end before the city was destroyed. He was marked by the company as a security hazard, and therefore, he would have been hunted down by the monitors in our platoons, or by the USS agents.
This assumption was indeed true. According to Raccoon City survivor and former Umbrella employee Yoko Suzuki's testimony, Greg Mueller was assassinated by Nikolai Zinoviev in the final hours before Raccoon City was destroyed. William Birkin, Nathaniel Bard, Greg Mueller, and his colleague Peter Jenkins all attempted to undermine Umbrella before the T-virus outbreak in Raccoon City. However, it was the disaster of the outbreak itself that became the catalyst for even more deception among Umbrella's ranks. We'll now present some of the known cases of Umbrella employees turning on the company as the outbreak unfolded.
Authorities remain silent about the numbers and details of the situation, continuing the media blackout.
Little background information had been uncovered regarding this former Umbrella biologist, except for that she had worked with the Nest facility alongside survivor Yoko Suzuki. It is confirmed by Ms. Suzuki that Monica perished within the Nest facility, but gave a description about the researchers' attempt to steal a G-virus sample. Monica was part of William Birkin's G-virus research program and therefore was present in the Nest facility during the early morning of September 23, 1998, when the USS conducted their raid against the facility. Monica and the other staff were left unharmed by the USS, but after the failed attempt to secure Birkin, the facility was left with no one to manage it, and, with the sabotage done by William Birkin leaving BOWs on the roam, the facility's operations would totally cease. After the raid, whatever BOWs Birkin hadn't released were now on the loose, and were quickly wiping out the remaining staff and researchers. Instead of trying to leave on September 24th, like most staff did while they were able, Monica decided to stay behind. On the 26th, Yoko Suzuki would find herself once again within the nest, and it is here that she encountered Monica once more. According to Ms. Suzuki, Monica already had a G embryo on her when they met that day. Monica would lose her life during that escape attempt, and the G embryo she was carrying was destroyed by Yoko and the other survivors who were present with her. To this day, Monica's intentions with that embryo are still unknown, but it is presumed, like many others in her position, that she would have used it as leverage against the company or sold it to the black market. This segment contains more portions of the anonymous UBCS survivor, who would later be identified by federal authorities as Arnold Reed in 2011 upon the discovery of his then unidentified body in the Black Canyon of western Colorado. This interview was never aired on television, as it was clearly edited and arranged for just that, but was included in the Umbrella archives upon its public release. We also make use of the digital footage found within the archive, later identified as the fabled Biohazard video game series, that was never finished, but was the subject of nearly 2 decades of speculation and rumor. The accuracy of this footage, coupled with the physical evidence and testimony we have, allow us to depict these events in their truest form.
So tell me about your service with UBCS. When did you join, rank, etc.?
I had been with the UBCS since it was created back in '91. Rank specifics would give away too much, but I was with the only UBCS platoon to last until October 1st.
Do you know anything about the unit's history?
The company wanted a separate unit that was dedicated to fighting BOWs, since they were creating all these dangerous mutants off their viruses. Now, you see, they already had the USS, but they were more for clandestine covert ops, or the VIP security. The USS wouldn't start being trained for anti-BOW operations until about '96.
During the Raccoon City Destruction Incident in 1998, Umbrella would deploy its paramilitary unit, the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, under the pretext of using the force to secure some of the company's more sensitive locations, as well as to assist local authorities and the National Guard in search, rescue, and evacuation operations.
So how did Umbrella fill the UBCS ranks then?
They recruited from inside the US, but I'm almost positive most of our guys came from the former Soviet Union, or at least some of the former Warsaw Pact nations.
I see. So the Raccoon City development was the UBCS' first real deployment, and we're just recently learning from surviving Umbrella employees that your unit was expected to fail.
We were expected to die, because if we hadn't, that would have meant Umbrella's little pet monsters were useless. They had to be able to stand up to, and win, against a trained and armed force. And after what happened to that STARS team, up at the mansion, they knew exactly how our deployment would play out. It was us. Our guys. The boots on the ground that had no idea what hell we were really getting set into.
The real reason for the UBCS deployment, however, was a recreation of the X-Day operation, in which the former Raccoon City Police Department's STARS team were used as unwitting test subjects in an evaluation on the BOW's ability to overcome an armed, trained group. Now imagine what Umbrella was trying to do there, but with a much larger human force and an even larger testing ground filled with thousands of BOWs.
4 platoon-sized elements got sent in, which is roughly about 120 men. Basically the entire force, minus a few dozen that were scattered throughout the states at other company properties. We were outfitted pretty much the same way a regular Army infantry grunt would be. Small arms, indirect weapon, demolitions, sharpshooters, some of the latest field equipment, like night vision and communication devices. But even though we were trained to fight these BOWs, this would be our first time engaging with them outside of a training scenario. We also weren't told exactly what we'd be dealing with when we got into the city.
Much in the same way that Albert Wesker was meant to record the combat data he witnessed when STARS would fight BOWs, monitors, as they were called, were implanted into the UBCS ranks, who were usually higher-ranked members of the force. These monitors would record battle data, but their tasks also included destroying key evidence throughout the city that tied the company to the outbreak. Carlos Oliveira, who had escaped Raccoon City with survivor Jill Valentine, and Nikolai Zinoviev are two of exactly 12 UBCS members that escaped the city, though several of those members have never come forward or have kept their identities a secret. Mr. Oliveira provided witness testimony during the trials, but Nikolai had never came forward, even to this day of writing this episode, with his name still being listed among the FBI's most wanted. Nikolai Zinoviev, or Genoviev, depending on which one of the numerous identifications this man has owned, is one of the more fabled names among the survivors of Raccoon City. Mostly due to the efforts of survivor Jill Valentine, it was learned that Nikolai was one of the aforementioned monitors. Just as well, a large pool of money was placed aside for the monitors, 15 in total, which would be divided amongst them when they returned from Raccoon City. As far as Nikolai understood, the less monitors that survived, the bigger the share would be for those who did survive. And so, not only did Nikolai aid Umbrella in destroying key evidence, as well as the destruction of at least 2 locations in the city, he also assassinated several of his fellow monitors, as well as Dr. Greg Mueller, impeded the progress of the UBCS platoons throughout the week, attempted to murder Jill Valentine on several occasions, and escaped Raccoon City with an unknown number of viral samples and company data. He is also suspected of the murder of Dr. Nathaniel Bard, whose body was discovered by the aforementioned Carlos Oliveira within the Raccoon City General Hospital. Many of the Raccoon City survivors were crucial parts of Umbrella's undoing in the legal system. But a group of dissenting Umbrella researchers, teamed with a rogue Umbrella Security Service squad, evacuated the city with a trove of evidence against the company. Marco Rodriguez was a career employee with Umbrella USA, commanding his own Umbrella Security Service squad he referred to as 2nd USS. His squad was not part of the Nest Raid operation, but Rodriguez was known to be familiar with multiple Umbrella locations, given that he was a helicopter pilot frequently conducting flight operations for Umbrella's needs. One such location he frequented was the Umbrella Dockyards, which was located right outside of Raccoon City. During the late evening of September 30th, Umbrella gave orders to Rodriguez's 2nd USS to retrieve one of their experimental BOWs from that very dockyard, a creature codenamed Nyx. Packed up in a shipping container, Rodriguez used his Chinook helicopter and team to secure the container and airlift it from the docks. His orders were to bring it to the Chicago headquarters, but Rodriguez had already planned prior to this to go rogue on the company, and saw this as his opportunity to do just that.
Let's take that and get the hell out of here.
Already planning to rescue several Umbrella researchers wishing to defect from the company, Rodriguez would land within Raccoon City late night on September 30th, on his way out with the BOW to pick up said researchers. It was during this time that 2nd USS met its fate. In order to avoid being caught in the oncoming airstrike, Rodriguez took off from Raccoon City, but lost the container with the BOW in transit. Rodriguez would go along and testify alongside the famous outbreak survivors, giving valuable insight into Umbrella's more clandestine activities, business dealings, and efforts in destroying key evidence throughout the city.
I was with Charlie Platoon. We were ordered to drop in the northern section, where the municipal and the local government buildings were. Don't get me wrong, we dealt with some pretty nasty stuff, but I feel like we didn't get the worst of it. Not like the other platoons. We wound up on the expressway, leading out of the city after this jackass Umbrella exec, Nielsen, commandeered Charlie to go handle some company business.
This business was the USS Captain that went rogue, yes?
The one who's testifying right now? Captain Rodriguez? Yeah, Umbrella wanted that guy taken out before he could make it out of the city.
Wasn't the survivor, Linda Baldwin with him? The one who made it out with T-virus and antiretroviral drug?
Linda? Yeah, that was him. But they didn't want him dead just because he was colluding with other rogue employees. Rodriguez stole a BOW, and he intended on giving it over to the authorities as proof of the Umbrella creating these monsters.
But as we can see, Rodriguez did indeed make it. Do you want to give us a little insight into how, considering what your orders were?
He escaped because we, as in my platoon, just said. We got the orders to set up a kill zone and to try and stop him from flying out. Maybe 6 hours before the call came in that the city was going to get flattened. When the warning about the strike came in, I told that exec to shove it. I grabbed as many of my guys that were willing, and we took a few trucks down to that expressway right out of Raccoon. Some of my men stayed behind, but from what Rodriguez is saying, he accidentally dropped the BOW on the expressway, right on top of that exec Nielsen.
Captain Rodriguez was responsible for evacuating several Umbrella USA researchers from the doomed city. There was one such researcher he was forced to abandon, but, thanks to the efforts of the outbreak survivors, Linda Baldwin was able to escape Raccoon City. Having worked around several BOW programs at Umbrella's above-ground development center, Miss Baldwin and several staff members decided to gather as much evidence and documentation as possible and escape the city. Seeing the threat presented by a widespread outbreak, Miss Baldwin took with her a sample of AT-1521, an antiretroviral drug that drastically delayed the progression of T-virus spread throughout an infected person's body. Waiting for Miss Baldwin was Captain Rodriguez, but she was unable to reach the captain in time before he decided to leave the city. As fate would have it, the outbreak survivor group with Yoko Suzuki came across Miss Baldwin as they fled for the expressway. Using vehicles that were abandoned by the now deceased UBCS Charlie platoon, the group escaped with both Linda and the AT-1521 sample. In a final act of defiance against Umbrella, it would be Albert Wesker who ultimately helped bring them down. This was a means to his own end, of course, but it was later discovered that it was he who, at the time, anonymously submitted the trove of evidence that sealed Umbrella's legal fate. There is nothing funny about what Umbrella has done to the world, but there is a great sense of irony that overcomes one, learning that in the end, this company that was born from deception died from deception. The Raccoon City incident certainly put Umbrella on the path to its own destruction, but it wasn't until someone who the company once trusted that ultimately delivered the killing blow. And even then, this act of justice only served to further the unjust ambitions of yet another man seeking dominance over humanity.